Hi, everybody. Welcome to the OFM podcast where metabolic health matters. And today I'm with the lovely Jenny Capel, a recently retired ultrarunner. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right? Recently retired competitive ultrarunner.
Yes.
And how long have you been in the sport?
22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Jenny was one of my early adopters. I think you were the second person really to adopt this after John Olson due to your GI issues.
He was the one who gave me my first VESPA.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about that later because I want this. This is a story about Jenny. And yes, VESPA and OFM figure heavily into her success. And as you can see, she's absolutely gorgeous. Would you disclose your age if you feel free to? Because
51.
51 and still drop dead gorgeous. And this is just, no, don't thank me. Thank your parents and your health. You can thank me a little for the anti-aging part, but you got good genes. So anyway, Jenny, we want to talk about your journey because it's very relatable. And as you know, you listened to Kate's, and Kate's journey was sort of like an early version of yours.
Yeah.
Before we had a podcast, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, I want to start with the inspiration because I want to learn more about Roland Martin.
So thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So Roland was my dad, and he had been an ultra runner when back in the day of the Gordy Ainsleys, some of the very first ultra runners. And I grew up being his crew out on the trails, and I just thought it was the stupidest thing ever. Why do you want to be out here on these trails?
How old were you when you were going through this? Were you a tweenie or a teenager or what?
I was a teenager. And I just thought it was the stupidest thing. And I was getting dragged all around and seeing him climb and he would make chocolate chip cookies with extra salt because they didn't have what we have now. They didn't have goos and all of that. So he would make his own food. And then he had those horrible Power Bar was just coming out. And I remember them being rock hard bricks if they got too cold. And his hydration drink of choice was Gatorade because that's what was out, or he would just take water and put salt in it. So he'd be drinking.
When did your dad start running ultras? Because he was literally in that Gordy Ainsleigh late 70s, probably
in the 80s. He was early mid 80s.
Okay, so he was the same time frame as Bruce LaBelle, our friend Bruce.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I Mike Hernandez and Finkbeiner, Wayne and Dana, all of them, they kind of ran together. They were in that group.
By the way, these are all Western States they were Western States regulars and top finishers. And it was a pretty close knit group back then, wasn't it?
It was very close knit. Yes. So I grew up with that. And everybody,
I thought it was stupid.
It was stupid. I went through high school and my brother and my sister both ran and they tried to get me to run. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. This is just stupid. You mean I have to train? What's the point of running from point A to point B when you could drive or ride a bike? And so I played softball and was a cheerleader. And even in softball practice, I hated to run. It was, I'll run around the bases once I hit the ball, but otherwise I don't want to run. So,
okay, now you're giving me some insight in why you were such an avid sports mom for your kids because they play baseball.
Yes, yes, I love baseball. I am a baseball mom through and through, and thank God I still have one playing in college. So,
okay. Now with Roland, I remember I met your dad. When he was on his last. Years alive, he came to watch you at Western States.
Yeah.
But he was sort of Gordy and I. He was a shirtless runner, huh? He was a hairy shirtless runner.
They called him the Silverback. He was very hairy. It looked like he was wearing a sweater, and it was gray, so they called him.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah. So when I got out of high school, I went to college, didn't run. And then when I went to PT school in the Netherlands, you know, we were eating a lot of chocolate and cheese, and we would ride our bikes. That was how we, you know, got places. That was our form of transportation. And I need to do something else besides just ride my bike a few days a week to class. And so I started dabbling in running. And then in one of my internships, I was actually in Tucson, and one of my classmates was also there. And she's, let's do a race. Okay, what race are we going to do? And it ended up being kind of a Tough Mudder type of race, but I had a lot of fun. And then I signed up for a 10K down there. And I thought, I can run 6 miles. And so I ran it. I mean, I had a good time, had a little bit of a high, and I was walking away, and all of a sudden I heard my name announced. And I was like, what? And I had won third in my age group. I was only 23, 24. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. I'm kind of good at this. I don't know how many were in that race that were my age group, but I was like, wow, I just got an award for running. So then, yeah, I still kind of ran. I remember for Christmas asking my mom for a Timex, but not to tell my dad, because my dad would have been all over me. This is what you need to do. You know, you need to do this and this, and you need this many miles. And I don't want to deal with that. So she didn't tell my dad, but I got a Timex for Christmas.
You didn't want the mansplaining, huh?
Exactly. Well, because growing up, I'm one of 3, and I'm the oldest, and I was very much the nonconformist and the rebel. If they told me to do X, I did Y. That's why we get along so well. Exactly. It kind of explains some things. So
explains a lot.
So it was kind of that I didn't want to always, you know, I always felt I had to be perfect. I always had to get good grades. I always had to do that, you know, and I felt I was critiqued as I was growing up. If I did something not quite right, well, why did you do that? And it's like, well, because I thought it was going to work, or it was the right thing to do. So I was always critiqued on things. And so I didn't want to hear that from my dad. I had actually, when I was growing up and playing softball, I banned him from any of my games, because after my games, I could hit a home run, but he would have said, you bobbled that ball in the 3rd inning, and you should have been able to make that play. And I'm like, yeah, but what about my home run? So I said, I don't want to.
Was your dad Japanese?
I know, right? So
my mother was that way.
So that's why I didn't want him to know. Well,
yeah.
Fast forward, I had come back home, and I was living actually in the Bay Area doing my first job, and some of the girls ran, and I ran, and my longest distance had been 9 miles. And one of them said, well, why don't you come out and run with us? We're going to run 15. And I was like, 15 miles? I die after 9. I can't do that. Well, it's an out and back, so you can turn around when you want to. And so I started out running with them, and I was like, whoa, this is a lot slower than what I'm used to running. And I ran the whole 15 with them. And I was like, if you go slower, you can go longer. And then one of them is like, hey, we're going to run CIM. Why don't you sign up? So Cal International Marathon. And I was like, 26 miles. That's really far. I did. I signed up, and that's basically when I had told my dad, I'm going to run a marathon. And he, of course, said he wanted to be a part of it, and he would actually pace me towards the last 8 miles. And see what I'm talking about. So he came out, I ran my first CIM. I ran a 3:17.
What year was that?
1998, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, 98. And 98 or 99. Now I can't remember. That was a long time ago.
Oh, man, I ran my first CIM. I can't remember if it was 2000 or 2001.
Yeah. And he ran the last part with me. And I guess it hurt him pretty bad because he didn't expect me to run as fast as I did. He had a 50 miler. He had Sunmark 50 the next weekend, and he had a tough time. But so after I did that, you need to come and run trails. You need to run a 50K. And I was like, I'm not running 31 miles. 26 was plenty. And he's like, oh, it's different. And I said, no, I'm not doing that yet. So I ended up running a couple more. I ran San Francisco and I ran Boston, and I had told him and then I ran the Tahoe Marathon, and I had told him after I ran Tahoe Marathon, I would try an ultra, because by that time we had moved to Reno. And
when did you meet your husband? When did you meet Steve?
I met Steve in the Netherlands when we were in PT.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I met him in 96. And then
you guys were both PT students over there?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was really cool. And he was the one who wanted to move back to Reno, because we were living in the Bay Area working. And where do you want to live? I said, I want to move to Colorado, because I had been living in Colorado for a year and a half after college. And we had looked, and salaries were $10,000 less than they were in Reno. And he's got Reno. And I was like, I have to go back home. I said I was never going to go back home. And we've been here since 2001.
Right. And of course, at the time, working as PTs in the Bay Area, it was just unaffordable, right?
It was getting to be that way to buy. I mean, we lived in an apartment. To buy a house when we left, it was a little shack in Palo Alto, was $500,000.
Yeah, off Alma by the railroad tracks.
Yeah, exactly. It was a fixer.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I finished Tahoe, and I told my dad, and so then he trained me. He trained me to run. I signed up for Way to Cool, and he helped train me and get me into shape for that. And I ran it, and the smile, there's a picture, and I don't know, I can't find the picture, but it's the excitement and everything after I had crossed the finish line. It was the best thing I had ever done. And I got to do it again. And back in those days, there was a booth for American River 50 right there to sign up for 3 weeks later. So what did I do? I'm going to go sign up for AR 50 in 3 weeks. So I did my first 50 miler 3 weeks later.
Did Greg Soderland have those races at that point?
I can't remember who had Cool at that time. Gosh, that's so long. Norm. No, it wasn't Norm.
Was it still
AR was Greg? AR was Greg.
Okay, was it Way Too Cool, or was it the Cool Canyon Crawl still?
No, it was Way Too Cool.
I think Greg might have had it then too.
He very well may have.
Yeah.
I don't really recall, but yeah. So I went and ran AR 50 and
how'd you do with those races?
Huh?
How'd you do with those races?
So in Way Too Cool, I ended up taking 4th. I got passed at mile 26.5 on the left turn going up towards
the hill. Yep.
By Terry Schneider. She ended up taking 3rd. But I remember there was a guy in the very beginning. I was going up Browns, and I was running, and he goes, "Why are you running this?" Because I can. And he's, "Have you ever done an ultra before?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "You might want to walk." And I was like, I don't think I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to do what I want to do. And so I did it. And I mean, it's a runnable climb. I mean, still to this day, I would go and run
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
So I ended up placing 4th, and I think I ran a 4:36. And I remember asking my dad, well, how did you think I was going to do? You know, what did I, you know, and he goes, I thought you would run somewhere between a 4:45 and a 5. And I beat you. You know, I did better. And at AR, I ended up, did I take it AR? I might have been 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah. I was finding out that it was something I had a talent for. I can run for a long time if I go slower.
Well, if you don't go marathon pace.
You don't go marathon.
Or 10K pace or whatever you know, where you started off at, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, I ran AR and, yeah, I loved it. And then, you know, he had mentioned 100 and I can't imagine running 100. That's like crazy. 100 is crazy.
And you were watching your dad do this back in the day too.
I was watching him do it back in the day. And
I mean, all those guys, there was always carnage because back in those days, they ran Western states, you know, you ran as hard as you could till you couldn't, and then you just kind of death marched in, right? That was exactly. And so,
so I did a bunch of different 50Ks and 50 milers, and always placed very well. I think I won a few. And then I ended up putting my name in the lottery for Western states. Under my dad's urging, I'm not ready. He goes, you're ready. You'll be ready by next June if you get it.
What year was that?
So the lottery, I got in. My first 100 was in 2003. And so that was in 2002. So we went down to the lottery and I was getting ready to run CIM the next day. So I had the lottery and CIM was the next day. And
that was when they had it in the cafeteria at Auburn High, which it's gone now.
Yeah.
They bulldozed and built that new building. Yeah.
And sat in there, waited for my name to be called. It wasn't called. And then they had, there were 30 more spots available and they had an intermission or whatever. And if you wanted special consideration, you could fill something out and give it to the race director. Was that Greg at that time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Greg.
Yeah. And so my dad, we're going to fill this out and we're just going to put that you've been winning these races and, you know, it's your turn to get put in. I was like, okay, well, you know, you turn it in, I think at the end. But we were writing it all out. So I sat there and I was one of the last 30 drawn and so excited and not exactly sure what I was in for. And yeah. And then I went and PR'd at CIM the next day, broke 3 hours and I was like, okay.
Whoa, that's impressive.
Yeah. And, okay, here we go. So then I ran my first 100 in 2003.
How did it go?
At Western States. I was a newbie. I'll start off with that. There were a lot of things, a lot of challenges that came up that I had never experienced before, such as blisters on my feet.
Yep.
And I had blisters on my feet, nausea that would not go away. And I mean, my dad, I remember him telling me, just put your finger down your throat, just make yourself puke. And I'm like, I can't puke. I just feel crap. And it was a death march, the final, it was from the final 7 miles. They were slow and it was walk. I was walking. I ended up running 21:36.
Whoa.
And I placed 6th female.
Right on.
On my death march.
I mean, you ran it old school though.
I totally did.
Then crawl in.
Yes.
I think that was the first year I paced Simon Machewy.
Maybe. Yeah, 2003. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I ran in 2003. Yes, it was in 2003. Simon and I ran the last part of AR together. And
I was, yeah, I think I was with Simon that year.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. At that time, so when my race at AR, I placed third and I ran like 6:53. And I was behind Jen Pfeiffer and Nikki Kimball. And right. I was happy to be behind them. They ran some incredible time. And I was selected as an alternate for the 100K Worlds. Yeah. So I ended up going over there and doing that in 2003 too. And then
you did run it?
I ran it. Yeah. Yeah, I was glad I went over there and did that. It was a hillier course than most of them. It was humid. It was in Taiwan. It was a great experience. I was glad I did it. It was fun. It was different. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. As a note about Simon and yeah, we ran together. I think that's when I first knew about you, because we ran a pretty good section of the AR Canyon together, right? Because you had who was your pacer? Do you remember?
Dad towards the end.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of odd we bring up Simon because Bjorg, Osterheim Smith, and Bruce are over in Tanzania doing stuff with Simon. Yeah.
Oh, I still would love him to be a guide. That's still one of my dream trips, is to go up Kilimanjaro.
Well, and if you got time, get on Facebook and look at Bruce's and Bjorg's posts. I mean, they're doing the foothills. They did the foothills of Kili, and then they went on a Serengeti, Ngorongoro crater safari. Yeah, they're doing the whole thing. You know, having a great time. So check it out. Yeah. So okay, so 2003 Western States, your first 100.
And then 3 weeks later, I ran Vermont.
Did you do the Grand Slam that year?
No, I never did the Slam, and I never had any desire. But my dad had said, so this is one reason why I was telling you that when I wanted a Timex, I didn't want my mom to tell my dad, because he was a little kid in a candy shop with me. Okay, now we're going to go do this. And now we're going to go do this. And so we had signed up. Once you're trained for 100, it's easy to do another 100. And it is true. Once you're trained for one, but after I finished Western States, I mean, do you remember what you felt after your very first 100? I mean, your body has no idea what you just put it through, and it rebels. And I was pretty depleted, and I had blisters on my feet. And I can remember my dad wanting me to do this 120 miler. And I told him, I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because I'm tired and I need to rest. And so I did. And then I went and ran Vermont, and I took second. And I said, and I had a great race, and this is how I wanted Western States to be, but I ran it as my second race. So that was okay.
So you kind of got the bug for the hundreds at that point.
Yeah, I the distance. As I did more of the hundreds, you kind of sit back and it's, what do I love about them? Number one, I truly believe not everybody can run 100 miles. I think anybody can run a 50, because you don't have as much, and I'm probably going to get haters regarding that, but because I think the mental fortitude that you need in 100 is definitely different than a 50, because you get to, say, mile 65, 70, and your body might be beat up, and then it's your head that can get you through, because your body's telling you, I'm ready to stop. And you have to say, no, you can keep going and get through little demons that get in your head. So I say that's one reason. And the other thing for me personally is that around 2/3 of the race, it's the hardest part of me in the race. That's where it's just kind of, you've got a lot of miles past you, but you still got quite a few before you're smelling the barn. And it's where I truly feel the most vulnerable. And I'm not a very open, vulnerable person. I'm pretty private. But there, I have been stripped, and it's anything goes. And there have been some races that I really feel that vulnerability and really have to try to fight, and the demons come in. And other times it's kind of like, oh, my mind is really strong right now, and the demons are talking, and I'm just like slaying them left and right, going, yeah, go away, I'm going to get this done.
Yeah, I'll frame it from a biologist standpoint, because I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
And think of it this way: a 50 miler or 100K is really nothing more than what we evolved to do, which is being on our feet, hunting and gathering all day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, of course, the 100, you're taking it well past that. And you say you get to that 65-mile mark, a little bit past 100K, and then you enter what I call the 65 to 85 or 88-mile mark, which is what I call no man's land, where you say the demons come up and where people drop. Because like I say, you get to mile 85, 88, 90, you start to smell the barn. And it's like, if you're not injured, it's like, I've come this far, I'm not quitting now.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. So, yeah, so I would try to do, well, right after 2003, after I ran Worlds, I was ready to, Steve and I, my husband, were ready to start a family. It was something we had talked about. And it was really interesting, because at that time I would tell people would ask, well, what are you racing next year? And I'm not, I'm going to start a family. And they're like, really? Why are you going to do that? You're kind of on top of your game right now, and I'm just like, because running's always there. I was, 30, 31, and it's my time to start a family. This is what I wanted for my life. Running just kind of came in, and yeah, so I took some time off, and I had my first child, and then I got back into running after him, and then I got pregnant again and had my second one. So
how far so your kids are fairly close?
Yeah, 23 months apart.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
So fast forward, so now you're a mom with 2 young kids.
Yeah. So yeah,
and a PT. Here's where the juggling starts to happen, right?
Yeah. So actually, when Steve and I were in the Netherlands at school, and we had to do internships while we were there, we really appreciated the European way of life, where family is more important than work. And so it would hit 5 o'clock, and I've still got paperwork to do, and my boss would be like, just put it down, it's 5 o'clock, you need to go be with your family, it'll be here tomorrow. Okay. And they only worked, I think it was 36 hours at that time, 36 hours a week. But their work family balance was incredible. And so Steve and I had said, when we get back to the US, we need to make sure we had that. Well, of course, you get into the American way, and it's work, work, work. And we were both supervisors, managers, and working, 50 hours a week. We had one kid, just had a second one. And then it was arguing, well, I dropped him off. Well, I don't have time to pick him up. Well, you get to pick him up, and da-da-da-da-da. And finally we sat down, we're like, what are we doing? This is what we told ourselves we were not going to do. So he and I, we both quit those jobs. And from the time the kids were 1 and 3 to present, we've only worked 32 hours a week. That's
as therapists, as PTs.
As PTs.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that balance. I mean, I'm sure when you were both working as supervisors, it gave you guys the income to buy a house, get everything in place.
Yeah.
And then scale back. But scale back, I mean, I'm sure it means precluding a lot of toys or trips or whatever, but it's
point. Yeah, toys. Yeah, that's not important to us.
Right. Exactly. But it's like, so what?
Yeah.
Right?
And it was for the what? And we've actually talked about that now. You know, we have plenty of you know, retirement funds and that kind of stuff. And that's really good how much we've saved considering how much we work. And we've been able to, Steve was able to coach the boys in Little League and a little bit beyond. I was involved in their school, would go on their field trips and that sort of thing. But it was because of our work-life balance.
Right.
And I said, oh, you know how much farther we would be if we had worked our 40 hours, you know? And he's like, yeah, but we wouldn't have had those things. Like,
and you'd be arguing more, right?
Right.
Right.
And would you have traded it? I'm like, no, I'm glad I was able to.
Right. And the good thing about just running, especially where you are in Reno, it doesn't cost a lot of money.
No. And, you know, the trail is like 10 minutes away from my house. So it's pretty perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, you started with the 2 kids and you got the 2 kids. And then when did you start to pick up ultra running again? Competitive ultra running? Because I'm sure,
I did a little bit in between the kids, and that was tough. I did not to be pregnant. That was not fun because it was a crimp in my style. And, but I raced again a little bit after the first one. So in 2004, and then, or no, I was in 2005. I remember I was aid station captain at Western States, and I was 7 months pregnant, and this big old belly. It was 2004. I had this big old belly, and yeah, here I was the aid station captain, telling people what to do, and having to cut off wristbands. I did not like that. But
did you run through your pregnancies? I mean, just recreational running?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Until I worked out up until the day before I gave birth. I started to get Braxton Hicks contractions with running, and I finally just said, it's not worth it. I'll go to the gym and get on the elliptical. And that's what I did.
Okay. So, and you had, I'm just asking the question, you had 2 natural births?
C-sections.
C-sections. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first one was breech.
Oh.
It was in there pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. So then, once you get a C-section, the rest, they just go C-section.
Yeah. And she asked me, and I had a friend who actually, she had a C-section, and then she tried to do a VBAC. She had such horrible back contractions, and it affected her back. She finally just said, do the cesarean. And I'm not going through that. I don't need to. It's not that important. I just want a healthy kid.
Yeah, I found that women who run through their pregnancies generally tend to have normal births. But you know, in your case, if your son was breech, that's a completely different situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. If I could have had him naturally, I would have. You know.
Yeah. I get that. I totally get that. But you know, you can't take the risk if it's a breech birth. It's a real high risk. Yeah.
He was so stuck. He had one arm that was paralyzed because his legs were up and his arm was pivoty. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So you did a little bit of running between them. And then when did you really kind of pick up? Because after you had the 2, you really started a run at it, didn't you?
Yeah. So I had the second one in 2006, and then I got back into shape, and I ran AR again in 2007. And back then they had golden tickets for Western States at the 50 milers, and AR was one of them.
Okay.
And so I won a golden ticket there. It was in 2007. I won the race, I believe. Yeah, I did. I won that race. And then I had a golden ticket, intended to run it in 2008. And then it was I
fire
remember
year. That was the fire year.
I got the phone call. I was getting some stuff at the store. I was the Wednesday before, and Lon Monroe called me and said, Jenny, did you hear it's canceled? And I was like, oh, you're shitting me. And he goes, no, Jenny, it's the fire. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I ended up running Tahoe Rim that year instead. They let us in at that time, anybody who wanted to, because you're in shape. So they let us run. That was a tough race for me because my head wasn't in it, because I had wanted to run Western States. That's where my head was. And it was your
comeback. That was your comeback to hundreds race.
Yeah. And I was just, okay, I don't really want to be out here. It was a long race. I basically hiked the last 26 miles. The course was different than it is now significantly, but, yeah. So then there was a debate whether they were going to let the golden ticket runners in 2009. And and I was just like, really? I earned that spot. And they did let us run in 2009. And I had a heck of a time. And it was in 2009. It might have been in 2008. I can't remember, 2008, 2009. And I was up running on the Tahoe Rim Trail, and I ran into John Olson. And he was telling me about VESPA and OFM and that sort of thing at that time. And he's like, here, and there were these concentrates. And I kind of looked at them, these are in Japanese or Chinese. I can't even read. What do I do?
Yeah. The original ultra concentrates, when we brought them in and tested them, that they were Vespa hypers, and the word hyper wasn't going to fly here, right?
Right.
They were the original ultra concentrates were when we field tested them, they were in Japanese. It's like a total drug deal.
Yeah, really. So he gave me these, and so I remember trying them on a training run, and I was using them like gels. And I was, well, I don't feel a kick like I do in the gel. These things don't work. So then move forward to 2009. I ran Western States, and I was puking my guts out from after the elevator shaft. I was like,
before
I don't
Cal
feel so good. And yeah, we were heading down to Cal 3. And my dad's like, just puke and you'll feel better. And I puked, and about half mile down the road, I don't feel good again. And that was a long, I was able to come back for a little bit, and then I exerted myself because there was somebody who was in front of me that I didn't want to beat me. So I took off and going down on the Quarry Road, and it bit me. And by the end, Jen Pfeiffer was pacing me, and I remember looking at her, and I had gotten down to no hands, and she's just taken ice chip. And as soon as I got it in my mouth, I was dry heaving again. And I looked at her and I said, Jen, I really think that I might need an IV when I get in, because I haven't been able to keep anything down. And she goes, don't worry, we'll be getting you an IV when you get in. And that year, I want to say it was the top 10 females were all in there getting IVs. I think the males too. It was a hot year, and it was tough. It was after that, shortly after that, maybe it was John. Anyway, shortly after that I had contacted you to try to figure out, what do I need to do? How do I use this Vespa? Because after that, I was puking all the time. It could be a 5K, and I'd puke. It was always 2/3 of the way through the race. I'd be puking, and it's why I should be able to keep this pace. I'm used to keeping this pace. And it's why all of a sudden I haven't had this problem before, but it was puking all the time. So yeah, that's when you said, you can't just take VESPA taking a gel. You have to try the diet specific for it. And you need to, and I don't eat a lot of carbs. And because what I was finding out in my pre-race stuff is I was slowly cutting out the number of carbs that because, carb loading, hello, pasta dinner, that I felt, it didn't make me feel good in the morning. And I felt really sluggish. And I didn't like that for the race day. And I found out if I could naturally just cut back the number of carbs, and I was starting to increase the amount of protein that I was eating actually. And then I would have a vegetable. And I found out that was working better for me.
Yeah, and it wasn't eliminating the carbs completely. It was just not having tons of massive amounts. It was
80% carbs and 20% protein.
Right. That was what people were doing back then.
Yes.
And so they're doing it now too. But I remember that when one of the first conversations, I said, yeah, you're going to have to give up bread for a while. And you said, bread, I can't give up bread. I love bread. I said, just bear with me for a couple months. And then I remember you going to have pizza. I told you, go have pizza and beer with friends. And you called me back a couple of days later and said, oh my God, I'm not going to ever do that again.
Yeah. Because I got
inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was once we got you adapted and you were doing well and eating more protein. You say a protein source and a vegetable and keeping the carbs down in your base diet.
Yes.
Yeah. As soon as you hit those carbs, it was like, whoa.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so so I really was very focused on getting the diet right so that I could use VESPA appropriately and that it would help and try to decrease the number of calories during the race. And I was running Western States 2010. And I remember the first big trial was running Miwok 100K. And my drop bag consisted, I think I had a turkey and avocado roll-up, a couple roll-ups in there to take. And I was trying to, and I had my goos on me. And I remember you telling me you take them, when you know that there's a hill coming, take a goo because you're going to be using those carbs to help propel you up the hill. And you're going to use them strategically. And so that's kind of what I did. And I followed your guideline of taking 2 juniors before I raced, and then the concentrates, every 2.5, 3 hours. And I did that, and I ended up having a great race. And I didn't eat hardly, probably a third of what I usually eat during a race. And I did great, and I had nice levels of energy. I also ran, the other one was Leona Divide, the 50 miler. And it was the first heat of the year. It was really hot. And I remember thinking, this is going to be a true test because I'll puke in it. I puke. This is what's going to happen. And I even got behind on my fluids. And I remember going into an aid station. It was Jimmy Dean's aid station. And I said, just give me a half gallon of water. I just need to down the water. And I downed it. And I thought, okay, we'll see what goes, because it was all exposed after that. And I kept everything down. And I was like, I felt great. I didn't cramp. I didn't puke. I was never nauseated. I was okay. There's something to this. Okay, I'm going to keep going with it.
And how was recovery on those races? Did you notice that too?
Recovery's always been fairly quick. And I can't really remember. It's been so long now. I mean, figure that was, 15 years ago when I started with VESPA.
Yeah,
it's a long time. That I don't really recall what I felt like before that after races. I was younger, and so recovery was a lot faster for sure.
Right.
That back then. But with the VESPA now, as I've gotten older, I have noticed that I can recover quicker. as long as I have everything dialed in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said there's something to this, and then you started into your kind of real golden time, right? You started winning some big hundreds.
Yeah, a little bit after. Well, yeah, I had won one. Gosh, when was that? My first big one was in 2008. I think I still hold the course record on that at Lean Horse. I can run. I can run for a long time. Just don't give me a lot of technical and hills. But yeah, it was Lean Horse. I did well, but that was before I was using VESPA. And then after that, actually the first Western states that I used the VESPA, I got sick. It was my only drop in my running career, my ultra career. And I really think I had a bug because I was having GI issues even up in Granite Chief, so early on in the race. And something is going on, and then it shut down the other way too. And then I was puking, and I remember I was using Vespa, but I was like, there's something else going on in my system.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then you really started racing a lot at that point.
Yeah. I would say more of the longer distances at that point. Yeah. Yeah. I was doing more of the hundreds. I remember there's this picture I have of you running Dick Collins File Trails 50. Yeah.
And you just look, God, you look so robust. You won that race, and I think you set the course.
I did win that race. Yeah.
I can't remember if you set the course record or you was the second fastest time, because
that race was, I think it was the second fastest time.
Yeah.
Or my first one. Yeah, I think that was the second fastest time. Yeah. That was after I had done Trans Rockies with Pam Smith, and I'd come back from that and then trained and ran Dick Collins. I think that was in 2012.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
It was 2012 because it was my last Western States.
Okay,
and that was your last. And then did Trans Rockies, and
So how did you have to drop it your last Western States?
No,
you finished that. I thought. Yeah,
I finished. I dropped in 2010.
Okay.
And had a golden ticket. You know, it's so interesting because I tell people I had golden tickets that I turned down, and people are like, "You turned down a golden ticket?" And it's like, yeah, I did. I won a golden ticket at Waldo, and I declined it. And they didn't do the roll downs at that time.
Yeah.
More haters. I'm not going back and doing Western States again. I just dropped last year, earlier that year. I'm not going to run it again next year. And
how was your Western States in 2012?
Oh, it was awesome. Number one, it was that cold year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And I remember coming in and seeing you at Dunkin', and I looked at you and I'm like, I am eating I need a lot more calories. And that's okay because it's cold out. You need those calories. Yep. And I was like, okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had a great race. That was my best Western States.
Yeah. No, that's great. That was the year Timmy Olsen won.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I started working with him a year earlier because he was having the same problems you were.
Yeah. And Nikki had the same problems. And I remember talking to her about it. And she said, I started the puke thing at around 7 years into ultra running, racing. And I was like,
Nikki Kimball, right? Nikki
Kimball.
Yeah.
And I said, me too. And that's when she started because of those issues. Why does this keep happening? And so, there's something with that. It would be an interesting study for somebody to do.
This is what got me going because, John was the first puker I was working with. And then you became the second puker, and then Roxanne, and then Timmy, we're talking about some of the best ultra runners at that time, right?
Yeah.
In the world. And then Nikki came along a couple years later. And but it's if you're doing a lot of carbs and trying to run, especially in the heat, it's not a question of if you're going to have a problem, it's when and what form. And I've said this numerous times before, but if somebody hasn't heard me say it again, they're listening to Jenny's podcast, you think of your GI tract as like a tropical rainforest. And because that's what your epithelial cells are, it's the forest. And then within that forest resides your biome, which is your first line defense on your immune system. It takes care of a lot of things, mitigates a lot of stuff before your immune system does. Well, when you're running at a high level, your body's reducing blood flow to those epithelial cells. It basically puts your GI tract on sleep. Now, if it's colder, not so much. If it's hotter, the hotter it gets, the more on sleep mode it becomes. So you're reducing the oxygen flow to those epithelial cells, so they don't have the oxygen. You're having all this intake of easily broken down sugar, because maltodextrin is just glucose polymers. Sucrose is glucose and fructose, and it just breaks down. And that level of sugar intake causes a huge amount of oxidative stress. So you're literally, reason I use that analogy of a rainforest or that kind of ecosystem is you're literally burning that rainforest down to a stubble over time. It doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time. And there's a whole bunch of variables. If you were born cesarean, or if you had a lot of antibiotics, or if you have candida, Jeff Browning had, he eventually developed candida, but you burn that epithelial cells down to a stubble, and then all of a sudden your biome can't reside very well. And then because you're feeding the biome with sugar, you're shifting the biome to more sugar loving type of things. And then that inflammation, because the blood flow is reduced, that was my epiphany. You guys were my epiphany, because working with you and John and Roxanne and Timmy at that point, I was like looking at the physiology books and talking to guys, Dr. Steve Finney. It's like, God, people are destroying themselves and they don't even know it. And, that's where we've got this backwards and we've got to do something better. But that's why you say, it might, how many runners have we seen come on the ultra scene and they're phenoms for 2, 3, 4 seasons, and then they're just out with injuries, anxiety, depression, or some other thing. And I'm not trying to talk trash or anything, but it happens. And it's just like you combine that much physical activity with a glucose, essentially a sugar-based diet. At some point, something's got to give.
True.
Yeah. And the good thing is in your case and John's and Roxanne's, Timmy's, we caught it, where it could be reversed. And that's where let's talk about that, because you kind of went on to win a lot of big hundreds and really just have a consistent, stable running life. I mean, you won Bighorn, you were in San Diego a couple times.
I didn't win Bighorn.
You placed top
3.
Top 3, okay. But you won San Diego a couple times.
3.
Okay. You don't have to be don't be modest, Jenny. Own it.
I've had some good races.
Yeah. No, you've won some big races, and that's the thing is San Diego is a good test because, like I said, your blood flow to your digestive tract is reduced, so the less calories you have to process, the better off you are. Right. It's a secret weapon in the heat.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. In my body, for the most part, I can run well in the heat. I know how to take care of myself.
Well, you live in Reno.
Yeah, I mean, it's warm, but it's not like, Sacramento warm in the summer. I wouldn't want to be in Sacramento in the summer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be 90 here today. That's not bad.
Yeah. Well, I ran my only Western States in 2006, and I had no problems.
Yeah.
And that was my first time using VESPA. I used it. I was thrown a couple pouches at the training camp a month before, and my friend Paul Charter said to me, try these. My friend Mojo swears by it, and they were talking about fat. I read the thing, and it's like, because I was already doing that, I was open to the idea, and that was my first 100. I had no idea what I was in for or doing. And, you know, I didn't take as many Vespa as I should have, but I took 5 or 6 and I had no trouble in the heat. I mean, I had no trouble. And thanks to my pacers, I got from being 25 minutes behind the cutoff, the 24-hour cutoff at Forest Hill. I was 25 minutes ahead at the river, 30 minutes ahead at 49, and then 45 minutes at No Hands. And nobody passed me until the last climb up to Roby. Eric Doobie just passed me. He was the only person that passed me.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was good. But yeah, we do well in the heat. So yeah. So you had a good run. And then in the last couple of years, you really kind of scaled it back. Let's talk about that. You know, I want to talk about that epic run you did in the Ruby Mountains with Miriam.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about you were checking a few boxes off here.
Yeah. So how it all kind of culminated, I'd say probably in the last 6 years. So my dad actually died in 2018. It was the day before Canyons, and I ran Canyons and I podiumed. But
that had to have been cathartic.
Yeah, I just knew he was out there on the trail, and it was the trail that he had introduced me to. And it's just the Western States. It was the old course, which, you know, you're on the Western States Trail the entire time. And it was, you know, this is where I'm meant to be. And he's with me the whole time. And so, yeah, finishing it was wow. Okay. That was good.
Is that when you started to carry that picture of him, that photograph of him on your pack?
I actually carried it with me, my final Western States, because I told him, so that was in 2012, because I told him I was taking him with me so that he could run his fastest Western States. And so that picture that year that I ran in 2012, I was 39. And then the picture, he was 39 at Western States.
Okay. He's sitting in a chair at a race.
He had just finished. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay. And I remember seeing him and your mom at the top of the Forest Hill aid station.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was up there. So yes, we completed. Yes. He got to run Western States in his fastest time. And then I took him with me on the Tahoe Rim Trail when I ran the FKT, because he and 2 of his friends were the first ones to ever run the Tahoe Rim Trail. And so I again told him, I'm going to take you along so you can run it the fastest you've ever run it. So
now you hold the female FKT for the Tahoe Rim?
No, Amber Montfort does, or Weeble, she does now.
Okay,
I believe she does, or it could be Chrissy. I believe it's Amber. I don't even remember. I don't keep track of those.
Yeah, honestly. Right. No, I know. Okay.
But no, Amber broke my record the year. It was a soft record, and I went in saying that. And Amber ran the time that I had wanted to run.
Okay.
But and so he ran with me on those 2 things, and those were very special for me. And then in 2018, I ended up running TRT, and I really shouldn't have run it because my dad had just died. My kids were in the middle of Little League All-Stars. I had a lot on my plate, and I didn't have time to really process everything. And it was at that race I kind of had the epiphany of, what is racing? Who cares? Who cares if you win a race? Who cares if you do that? You know, it's like, does it really matter? And there's this saying, no one cares you're an ultra runner, because everybody has to tell each other you're an ultra runner. And
or a vegan, ultra runner.
Yeah. In the big scheme of things, does it really matter? I go and I run trails. Some people run roads, you know, some people bike, some people swim. It's just kind of whatever you want. So I kind of had that epiphany. I wanted to drop, and nobody would let me drop. And finally I just said, fine, I'm going to sit in this chair until second place female passes me, and then I can go at whatever pace I want to go. And that's what I did. And so then I finished the race. But it was after that, I'm kind of done with this racing stuff. I don't need to. I had been trying to get into hard rock so way back in the early 2000s, I had said, I'd like to do hard rock someday when I'm ready. I have a lot to learn about ultra running before I'm ready to do that race. So
okay, now let's just stop right there. And so your inspiration for all this was doing all the races your dad did, right?
And they weren't all of his races. There were races that he had never.
Right. No, but you wanted to check off boxes of races he had done.
Some of them. So he had done hard rock. I knew he had done it, and he had told me stories about it. And I just, that's so hard. I have to have some races under me because I have to experience all of the little challenges you can experience, and I give much respect to every course that I run, because you have to. It's you against the course, and the course wants to win. And so you have to, San Diego, I always say, respect the heat. And it looks easy on paper. It's not that easy. And respect it. And, people go out and think, I can blaze this trail. And you go ahead. You've got to respect it. And that's just my philosophy. I mean, that's just how I approach racing. And anyway, so I had a respect for hard rock, and I ran Wasatch. And once I ran Wasatch, I said, I'm ready to put in for hard rock. And so that was
Wasatch is a pretty difficult 100.
Yeah. And that was in 2014. And I had a really good race.
So you ran Wasatch in how many hours? What was your time?
23:36, I think.
That was a podium finish?
Podium, I was third.
You had third, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, you must have been running against some pretty tough competition then.
That was fun. I know Denise was in it, Barasa, Darla Askew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got the golden cheetah buckle.
Yeah. So yeah, that's when I decided I'm ready for hard rock.
Okay.
I'll put in. And I said, I'm ready, but I don't want to get in. I don't want to get in just yet. And so I put in
process.
Yeah. So I put in, and it's just where I was in life. It's kind of, the boys are big into baseball and doing stuff. So I just need to start putting in. Well, and then fast forward, my dad died. I had a whole different outlook on running, that I didn't necessarily want to race anymore, but I had one race that, and I had really wanted to get in, I would say around 2017, 18, I was really glad I didn't get in because my head wasn't on right. And then anytime.
Was it 2017 or 18 that you did TRT and you had that epiphany?
It was in 18.
Okay.
And I was, thank God I didn't get in this year, because that would have been a nightmare. I wouldn't have finished the race. I could say that right now. But then it was, well, I want to get into hard rock. Hard rock will be my last one. It's the last one I have on my bucket list. And so I kept having to do the qualifiers. I didn't even want to do the qualifiers. I just have to. I'll get it done. However, I can get it done. I'll walk through it. I just have to get it done. And they weren't enjoyable. I had a good time. There was a point where after my dad died, I questioned whether I wanted to run anymore. And I had run Bighorn in 2019, and I told my pacers, the only goal I have is to find joy in running. And I met my goal that year. I had a great time. It was my slowest race, and I had so much fun. It was the first time I had done the race 2 other years. And I remember thinking that people kept telling me the course was beautiful. And I do not remember the course being beautiful. I do not remember. Yeah. That third time I saw I was like, gosh, I've never seen I saw the wildflowers before, but now I was really seeing them. And I this is just fabulous. This is gorgeous. And the rocks and it's just everything. Oh my gosh, I really love this race. It's beautiful. And it was a whole new perspective for me out there. And then, but I still didn't get it. Then they had the COVID. COVID happened, and then the snow. They had a snow year, and they canceled.
That's right. They had that massive snow year in 2019, and then 22.
They were back-to-back years. I want to say it was 20 and 21 that they didn't have it. So I had this qualifier, and it was good for nothing. And I was really upset about that. And do I really even want to do this race? This is ridiculous. And I had a friend said, you don't have to do it, but in 10 years, will you regret not doing it? And I said, yeah, I would. And then you need to keep putting in for it.
What's the requirement? Do you have to run 100?
You have to run 100, and they have a list of 100s. And so they're mountainous. They're mountain hundreds.
Right. And Western States, ironic. Western States isn't on that list.
No, and Western States is way too easy. And so they have this list. So I had done Bighorn I did it 4 times, basically as qualifiers. I did I'm Tough once, did not race at all. Part of it, I think it was where I was mentally. I didn't want to be there. Again, I was doing it as a qualifier. I didn't really want to run the race. But I got in. So 10th time in the hat, and I got in, and I got to run it this year. And so when I ran Bighorn last year, I had said, this is the last qualifier I'm doing. I have 2 years to try to get in with this qualifier. And if I don't get in, then it's not meant to be, that I'm not going for another qualifier. I'm done. And I had it all planned. I had planned it out. I'm done racing. I don't enjoy it. I don't like. Part of it is, I've been doing it for so long that the novelty it's worn off, and I'm in a different place in life. And I go out there, I'm still a competitor, and I'll be like, can't let that person beat me, or somebody passes me, and it's like, okay, I'll just hang on, and I'll catch them again. So there's an internal conflict, because that competitor in you wants to compete, but then there's this new part of Jenny you're exploring that's like, this is bullshit. Yes, exactly. And so then I get in a race, and I experienced it at Broken Arrow this year, and to remind me about it. Mm-hmm. And I got through it, and I was coming down. I was about 2/3 of the way through it, and I don't want to do this stuff anymore. I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to put in the mental effort anymore to make myself go. I don't want to race, to truly race. You have to be on your game, and you're running hard, and you're suffering. And I'm kind of done with that. I've done it for too long. I don't need that anymore. I want to stop and smell the roses and have that Bighorn that I did in 2019, where I saw the wildflowers for the very first time.
And before we finish up with Hard Rock, a couple of years ago, you and your friend Miriam did a day run on the Ruby Crest Trail, right?
Yes.
And that was along the lines of what you're talking. Just go out and just take in the day and the surroundings.
Just have fun, take in the surroundings. Yes. Have an adventure, go and explore new trails.
How was that?
Huh?
How was it?
How was the Ruby Crest? It was awesome. It was during COVID, so nobody was out there. And then they had Lamoille Canyon had flooded, and they had it closed, so people couldn't access it unless you started at, I don't know, the opposite end of Lamoille Canyon. So there was nobody on the trail.
Wow.
So would I ever do it again? I would, if I could have those same conditions and not. I enjoy just being out in the mountains and not seeing anybody. I
get that. That's my deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to go out there and take it all in and be like this little peon amongst the
universe.
Nature.
You're this grain of sand in the universe.
Yes. And I love that. It makes it, I don't know, to me, it's very spiritual, and that's really why I love the mountains. And when I finally got into hard rock and driving to this, now I'm going to get all emotional. Driving into the San Juans, I had never been there before. And there was this calmness that overcame me. And I just felt like this peace being in those mountains. Sorry.
It's all good. No, this is great. This is great.
It was absolutely amazing. Yeah, if I could go back there tomorrow, I would, just for that feeling. And there have only been a handful of races that I have felt that. And it also happens to be at some of my best races, but it's how I felt before the race and what I felt about the race than what what place I came in, or, my time or anything like that is. It's almost the race calls to me. And hard rock had called to me for so many years, or I had called to it, and then it responded.
Now did you, when you went there to just run through it, you weren't there to try to podium at all?
No, God, no. So if I had tried to do it 5 years ago, I probably would have put in a harder effort. My goal was just to get through the race, to beat my dad's time. And
beat your dad.
And I was having him run his fastest race on that course.
Yeah.
And I really just wanted to kiss the rock. I had dreamt of kissing the rock. And I just wanted to experience it and take it all in. I knew going into that race, it was going to be my last ultra. And yeah.
Well, you could do it like I've done a couple of them where I did Silver State as a supported training run. You guys put on such a great race at Silver State that it's like, if you're like me, so this is a supported training run. So never say never, but
yeah, I know it has something to do with my mindset in a race. Once that number goes on, the competitiveness comes out, and I can't just do a training run. And I learned that in the beginning years. I would try to run a race, and I remember my dad saying, "You're just doing it as a training run," and I could not put on a number and do it as a training run.
Okay, that's you.
That's me.
Yeah.
It did not work that way.
It's the same as when you show up to one of your kids' baseball games. You can't be rooting for them. You can't sit there quietly and not root for them.
No. And usually I'm off pacing. So so going into the race, and I had already decided, I had picked who my crew was going to be, and I wanted it to be people that had meant a lot to me going through my running career, and people who actually, a lot of them, they reminded me of my dad in different ways regarding the pacing. They're some of my best pacers ever. Mm-hmm. And all of them have a very dear place in my heart. And so, I had handpicked them months before the lottery was even done. And then it was, as soon as my name was drawn, I was texting them going, "Are you ready to go to Colorado in July?" And so we all showed up, and there was one goal, and it was for me to kiss the rock. And I did.
So how was it? What was your time, and how did it go? I mean, it's a tough race. It
was so hard. I had such a great time. I finished in 45:18. Okay. And I knew, I had somebody say my dad's time was 46:24, and he had run in the very first hard rock. And so it was really special. He was on my back, and, you know, I had somebody say, oh, you could probably easily run a 39, you know, easily. And I was like, okay. So I kind of had plotted everything out for a 39, but I also had done it for a little bit slower. And then I came into one of the early aid stations and told my crew, I said, figure 44 to 45. I'm taking my time.
Good. And you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody had given me, Robert Angelis had given me the advice. He's like, when you get up to one of the passes, just stop and look back at where you came from, because you could see the pass that you had just passed, and look to where you're going and take it in. And I did that at every single pass. And it was absolutely incredible. And I believe I never want to go down France Swat Pass again. That scared the crap out of me.
Oh, I've heard that. That's, yeah.
I was on my butt. Yeah, that was an experience. Yeah, all I kept on thinking was, please don't get hurt right now. You're only at mile 18.
Well, congrats. And that capped off your competitive ultra running career.
And that capped it off, and it was definitely the cherry on top. Yeah.
So what's the road ahead look for Jenny Capel?
You know, my husband and we had just signed up for yoga classes, which I've always dabbled in yoga, but now maybe a little bit more. I'm still running. I'll go out and run for fun and take the dogs out running. If somebody wants to go and do, I'd still like to do the High Sierra Trail. I'd like to do that trail. And go out and enjoy it and have fun. I'd still to
Jenny, you got to come down to the Southern Sierras. It's you know, I communicate with Howie Stern quite a bit, you know, and he used to live in the East Side, and he says, yeah. And it's like, it's so undiscovered because it's just all national park and national forest. I mean, everything, and people don't get out there. And one time I was talking to some people, I said, yeah, when I'd moved down to Visalia, and I said, yeah, you know, the running's actually better. And it's not to knock this Western States Trail or the Northern Sierra, but I said, it's actually better down there. And everybody said, yeah, no, it's Western States is the best trail. And then Tim Tweetmeyer happened to walk in. He said, no, it's better down there. And it's big country and just amazing. So yeah, the High Sierra Trail, I've run several sections. I haven't done it yet, but it is epic. And there's various ways you know, not just the High Sierras, there's just all kinds of options down there.
Yeah.
That are just amazing.
I got to run down there in June. I went down to climb up Mount Whitney, up to as far as we could before the snow really started, just to get some elevation training. I had a great time down there.
Yeah.
And it was quiet. Nobody was out there because there's still snow on so many of the passes. It was just, it was wonderful.
When you get into it on the other side of Mount Whitney and all that, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're coming in from the west side or the east side. It just, and you see people, but you don't see that many. I've been out there where I don't see anybody all day. Sometimes I'll see a half dozen. Sometimes I'll see 20, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty epic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff that I love to do, and I've been doing for years. I could care less. I mean, I could care less about racing one way or another. I want to stay in shape so I can do a Ray Lakes loop run.
Yeah. I just want to stay in shape. And if somebody asks me to pace, I'll be there to pace. And there'll be some ultras that I'll volunteer at, you know, but.
Right. And you're still in the Silver State Striders, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll still do Silver State, the registration.
Yeah.
It's just nice, you know, training takes up so much of your time that it's nice to have the extra time to do what I want. Yeah. You know, there's a girls' family a girls trip with my family in May, and I was like, I don't have to think, okay, well, what is my training going to be at that time? And I'm going to have to get in X number of miles on this day and that day. I can just go and enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice to know that.
Well, I don't know how comfortable you'll feel about talking, but this is one of the things we want to discuss is how being metabolically fit, OFM style, has contributed to your female health, because that's a big issue. And you're at 51. I don't know where you are in that female journey.
Yeah.
But we do consistently hear from females who are doing it right. It really does help wherever they are in that journey, whether it's their cycles or, of course, the journey through perimenopause. That's full of landmines. But any commentary you have on that?
No, because my doctor I've been on the pill, for years and years. And she said, just stay on it and ride it through. Yep.
No, if you're already on it, that's kind of, and because you're on the pill, you're probably on a low dose.
Very low dose.
Yep. So you don't even know where you are.
Nope, I don't. And she actually said, okay, maybe when you turn 52, next time you come in, we can take you off for a couple weeks and then do our lab work to kind of see where you're at. And I was like, okay. Yeah, it would kind of be nice to know where I'm at, but hey, if I can ride this sucker through, because I've had friends through it, and gosh, that doesn't sound like fun. You guys.
No, and it can be tricky because literally some women go batshit crazy and they don't even realize it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but I think, Bree Lambert Sanders, she's been through it in the last year or so, and she transitioned really comfortably.
Yeah.
And I think that's, what's that?
I said, I'm sure it has, because you can control a lot of things with the diet too. So if you're on more of the OFM diet, and not feeding the sugars in your body so much, then I'm sure it helps.
Yeah, it does in terms of, balancing your hormones, because you don't have that constant insulin and ghrelin and leptin spiking. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Plus, and part of the whole OFM lifestyle is being physically active, especially with a big aerobic engine. I think that also helps a lot.
Yes, I agree. And you hear that, in studies that they've done, they hear, about eating right, being physically active. It helps with all of the symptoms.
Yeah. Well, in Kate's case, she thought she wasn't going to be able to have children and had just kind of given it up, and she was going to focus on her running. As soon as it was within 2 to 3 months of getting her metabolism shifted back to being a fat burner, it was like, bam, she got pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
So very cool. Jenny, any other commentaries? Are you going to play more golf with Steve?
Oh yeah, we went out and played. Well, I'm working on my chipping and putting last week. Yes. Yeah. And I actually ran into a friend when I was out there, and she's okay, you're going to come into this ladies group next year. Okay, I will. I'll do that. So I'm excited for that. It's something different.
Okay. You can use VESPA for golf, actually.
Really?
Because it keeps your blood sugar stable. So your focus and motor skills, your fine motor skills, will be right there.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I'll
stay
use
hydrated, and you'll notice over 18 holes, you'll play, if you take one before and then one in the middle, you'll play your back half real consistently.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. So any other last commentary? I think we've covered a wonderful journey, and I'm glad we were able to play a pivotal role in that, because if you were puking back then, it probably would have gone.
Oh, I would have stopped running.
Yeah.
Because that's not fun.
Well, and the funny thing is, it's ironic, but that's considered normal and a sort of a rite of passage or a badge of honor in ultra endurance sports. The bonking, the puking, the diarrhea. You laugh about it over a beer after, but it's not supposed to be happening. And as I said before, the long-term consequences are not good if you just keep at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It shouldn't be normal. And that was, I think, that one of the greatest things is finding it and finding out that, knock on wood, I never puked after I started doing VESPA.
Yeah, except for that one time you had that bug.
And that you have to exclude that. I'm sure it was something else. But yeah, aside from that, and all the heat, all that kind of stuff, never anything.
Yeah. I remember John told me several years after we started working together, he said, Peter, you have no idea how I was. He said, it wasn't a question of if I was going to puke. It was when and how badly it would throw my race.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And it is. It's kind of having a great race and now I'm puking. How long is this going to take me now?
Yeah. And who's going to pass me? And
yeah. Yeah. Can I get it to stop?
Yeah. But I think, yeah, and let's move past that. So that's not normal. People think it's normal, but it's not normal, right?
Right. It's not.
Right. Now here's the point I want to make. You at 51 are what normal should be.
Okay.
This is what normal should be. And thanks so much for being such a huge advocate and believer, not just experience it and being one of our ambassadors. And we're going to keep you on that ambassador emeritus status so that you can get the VESPA whenever you need. And we'll send you a little love here for doing this podcast. And yeah, if you have any other thoughts.
No, I'm so grateful that you helped me figure everything out so that I could use it properly and continue to use it for 15 years of my racing career.
Yeah, well, let's keep using it as you go forward in life, because and stay in touch. Let's
definitely
plan some epic runs here at some point.
I know. Need to go out and just go explore.
Yeah. All right, Jenny. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. It was good. It was good talking to you.